Dang, I wish I had a fire extinguisher ready. I'm switching from the Sony A7 III to the Nikon Z6, and here's why. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. First off, just to get it out of the way, I like both of these cameras. There, I said it. If you still think I'm a fanboy, either way, that's fine, but I would say that my body of work speaking praise on both cameras kind of disagrees with you. Now, I know that's not gonna stop the comments, and you know what? Run free, and in the comments below, I do wanna hear your opinion on both cameras. And I really mean that because I am very aware that camera choice is a very personal decision for everyone. Now, if I can wax poetic for a second, now this might be because our cameras become almost like another sensory organ that, it captures both visual and audio memories, and that's pretty cool. Or we just like gear. One of those two is right. Okay, so why am I moving away from this A7 III and getting comfortable with the new Nikon full-frame mirrorless camera? Well, let's talk about the recording specs really quickly. Now, I'm not gonna cover the full gamut of specs in detail. If you do wanna see that, I have plenty of videos about both cameras you can check out. Heck, I even have a video directly comparing the two cameras if you want to watch that after this. But I do want to talk about some of what they do similarly because honestly, there is not that big of a difference between the two. And really quickly, I'm not a photographer, nor am I a professional videographer. I make home videos and these YouTube videos, so those are really the only specs we'll be talking about today because that's what's important to me and I want to share that with other online creators. Sorry, not sorry, photographers. Both the Z6 and the A7 III can record up to 4K 30 frames per second. The Z6 does this without a crop, and the A7 III has a small crop, but honestly, the crop is almost meaningless with how small it is. It's like 1.1 or 1.2. It's not gonna have a big impact on you. They both have a 24 megapixel BSI CMOS sensor. They both have phase detection autofocus. The Sony has more points than the Z6, but the specific point count doesn't really matter when you're doing video. That's more of a stills thing. Both have a tilting LCD touchscreen on the back, but what matters most is they both have a very nice assortment of physical dials and buttons that allows for easy use. My favorite physical feature on the A7 III are these two custom buttons, and I usually set them to record and crop mode. When you spend all of your time in front of the camera, reaching behind it to hit the record button, that's a pain in the butt. So the ease of just being able to customize these to what you want and just being able to go boop, record, that's so awesome, and I really like the customization of the A7 III. My favorite physical feature on the Z6 is the touchscreen on the back of the camera. When I make my video comparisons or home videos and I'm trying to track with autofocus, it's so much nicer where you can just tap the screen and the camera starts doing the tracking itself. I like when the camera does most of the work for me because ease of use, right? When it comes to image quality, I really like what both cameras do. They both have their own flair and approach video slightly differently. In all honesty, I do tend to prefer the standard picture profile of the Sony most times because it makes me look tan and healthy and not at all like the indoor cat that, I usually am. But I do like how more vibrant and lifelike I can get the image to look out of the Z6 with a few tweaks to the neutral profile. Plus, that 10-bit 422 over HDMI, while I don't specifically use it now, I like having that option in case I decide to get into more green screen or I want to try my hand at grading. Having that extra information is very useful. Another big benefit of the Sony is it has my favorite lens of all time. No kidding, this isn't even close. The Tamron 28-75 might be the best lens ever made. This lens by itself almost tilted this decision in favor of the Sony. I even wrote a whole script on me keeping this system because of this lens. It's a full frame fast zoom lens, but it's like the size of a big APS-C lens. It's remarkable. The Z6 does have a much more limited selection of native lenses, but it is really the first lens series that I've actually wanted to invest in. I think what they've done with this Z mount is one of the most impressive feats I've seen in a camera all year. And the 24-70 kit lens is also incredibly small for a full frame zoom lens. Look at that. Look at how small this lens is. Like, it's really impressive. And something else that's pretty important is price, right? And they're almost in the exact same price range. The Z6 is $2 cheaper than the A7 III though. Every dollar counts. I do want to mention really quickly some of the things that I don't like about the Z6, so you don't think I'm unfairly praising it and just like you know, dogging on the Sony, but I'm heaping all this praise on the Z6. I mean, it's not a perfect camera. One, the XQD card slot. You know, I do now have an XQD card. This 64GB card cost me $132. Sure, in the future, hopefully more companies will get into the CF Express and XQD game and bring that price down a little bit, but dang, if I lose or break this card, it is game over for internal recording. If I lose or break an SD card, I can go to Best Buy or Walmart and get another one if I don't want to use this huge mess of cards on my desk. I'm kind of a cluttered person. I've got like 10 SD cards over there. Another thing that really frustrates me is even when recording externally, you know, like we're doing right now, you still have to hit the record button first or the camera goes to sleep after about 5 seconds. Now, I assume you can change this in the custom settings, but I haven't been able to find it. If you know about it, please leave a comment below. I would love to change that. I've messed up a recording of every single video I've used on the Z6 because of this. I mean, I have a terrible memory and I forget every time, like trying out this new lens like 5 minutes ago, I forgot it and it cut off on me again. It should not be set like that on default. And the last big thing, which is fixed with an accessory, but I really wish was just fixed in camera, you have to buy this additional charger to run power to the camera itself. Yes, you can charge the battery if you plug in a USB-C cable, but it doesn't power the camera. On the A7 III, you can use any old USB-C cable and power it while it's running, which is incredibly useful when you do a live show once a week like I do. I mean, a big part of what I want out of a camera is something that will help me on my live show. But if they're so close spec-wise and there are things wrong with the Z6, why would I choose it over the A7 III? Well, to boil it down as simply as possible, the Z6 fixes everything I hate about the A7 III. It's like Nikon watched all of my videos about the A7 III and they said, hey, you know what, Everyday Dad? We're gonna fix those for you. Thanks, Nikon. There are 5 basic things that the Nikon does better than Sony, and that makes all of the difference for me. First off, the thing that I hate, and I don't mean dislike, but I hate about the A7 III are these accessory doors. And I know that sounds like a small, simple thing to complain about, but I often use all of these: audio, HDMI out, and power. When you try to do all 3 at once, these doors do get in the way. But what the real problem is, to get it working, you have to force the cables into their slots because of these doors, and that warps the connection to the camera. Over time, I assume this will cause internal problems, and I would probably end up breaking the HDMI port trying to get it all working. On the Z6, which is also weather sealed by the way, they have a pretty elegant solution. There are basically 2 flaps and both only connect to the top. You just undo them and move them out of the way. Nothing gets in the way, and this makes me so happy. I really just like how this works. Speaking of connections, the Sony has a micro HDMI port, and this is the worst, and I really wish camera manufacturers would stop using micro HDMI. It is such a small connection, and it falls out all the time, even for somebody like me that doesn't really ever treat their cameras too harshly, and it exacerbates the port stress we talked about earlier. Now, my preferred method is, do what the GH5 does and just have a full HDMI port, and then you don't have to worry about it. The Z6 doesn't have a full HDMI, but it does have the mini, which while not great, is much better than the micro. I haven't had a single issue of the HDMI cable falling out or even moving at all once I've plugged it in. Now, that's a minor improvement with major implications, especially for those of us that do video all the time. Thirdly, the rear screen. It's almost 2019. I mean, it will be 2019 in like 2 weeks. I refuse to accept screens that don't have good touch capability anymore. Yes, the A7 III can use tap to focus, but it's not that great, and I can barely get it to work when I'm trying to do, my video close-up shots for the camera comparisons. Like, it's really frustrating to try to dial that in. The Z6 touchscreen is fully touch enabled. Not only that, but once you tap on it to focus, the camera starts to track what you want in focus. You can also scroll through the menus and change the settings if you want from the screen itself. It is just infinitely more useful than the A7 III screen. Plus, if you use the A7 III and you wear polarized sunglasses all the time, like some of us, you have to put a screen protector on the back, or you straight up will not be able to see this screen. I mean, it does not work with polarized sunglasses. Something else quickly that's not a deal breaker, but is a very nice feature of the Z6 is, even with continuous autofocus, you can still use the manual focus ring to dial in your focus just enough to then tap and let the autofocus take over without changing a single setting, which is genius, by the way, and I use that feature all of the time. A quick fourth part is kind of negated by the Tamron 28-75, but this one is the lens light up. I'm actually kind of excited by the lenses that the Z-mount will be able to produce. I'm already very happy with this kit lens. It's probably my favorite kit lens of all time. One of the reasons I sold the A7 III a few months ago, and obviously I have one again that I'm gonna sell, I didn't want to get into traditional huge full frame lenses. With the bigger lens mount, I'm hoping for smaller and smaller lenses, and the 24-70 is surprisingly small for such a quality lens. I really hope they keep it up. The Sony 24-105 almost scared me off full frame lenses entirely. That sucker's huge, and it makes the A7iii like 3 times bigger. And last, and one of the most important to me, also regards autofocus. When you use an external monitor, because none of these camera manufacturers want to give us a flip screen, just give us a flip screen. When you use that on the A7iii, you lose the ability to have face tracking autofocus while recording 4K internally. That really sucks, and if you saw my X-T3 4 months later video, you'll notice that the autofocus is all over the place because it's not tracking my face. Now I could move the autofocus point up higher, but then I'll need to remember to move it back down, and remember the terrible memory from earlier, and fiddliness is the most important part of gear for me. I don't want to have to remember things because I won't, and then I'll screw up shots. The Z6 has face detection autofocus on when plugged into a monitor recording with the monitor or internal, and it works really well. I have zero complaints about the autofocus on the Z6, which speaks really highly of Nikon's innovation here. They've never been seen as like a good video company. Here they are crushing it on like their first attempt. Well, second if you count the Z7. Okay, so that was a long discussion on what matters to me and what I personally look for in a camera. I value ease of use over everything else because frankly, in most lighting conditions, I actually prefer the image quality of the A7iii more, and I like SD cards way more. Whew, almost 2,000 words later. Circling back to what I said in the beginning, both cameras are awesome, and if you were to get either, you would have a fantastic video camera. But for me, the Z6 is almost the perfect camera. If only we could develop some kind of like XQD to SD card adapter, I'd be all over that. If that's a thing, let me know. But also, let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment below on what you look for in a camera, and let's have a chat about it. I do want to talk to you guys about what your camera choices are. Thanks for watching.